Welcome everyone to another video discussion of free answer writing program by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we are going to see GS1 physical geography question. We are going to see 3 questions for the same. And by the way, I wish you International Day of Happiness. So let us see the overview of the first 3 questions. The very first question is with respect to the heat budget. In this question, we are going to see what exactly is heat budget and how the impact of human amends the heat budget of India. The second question is with respect to Western disturbances. What exactly is Western disturbances and what are the positive and negative impact of the same for Indian subcontinent. In the third question, we are going to see the significance and challenges of rising aerosol in atmosphere. So this is the overview of all the 3 questions that we are going to see today. Let us start with the very first question. Let's read the very first question together. What do you understand by the term heat budget of Earth? Discuss how human activities are having an impact on Earth's heat budget. Now let us try to decrypt the question, what exactly the structure that we have to inculcate for our answer writing practice. Firstly, in the introduction, as we have to talk about the term heat budget, you can easily define the heat budget in 2 to 3 lines and move on directly to the body. Where in the body, the heading 1, we will even go to the deeper nuances of understanding what exactly is heat budget, what are the components related to heat budget, and how exactly the entire mechanism works. In the heading 2, as there is direct explicit demand, which is we have to talk about the impact of human activity on Earth's heat budget. So that is going to be the heading 2, and in the conclusion we will be talking about way forward. So this is all we have to understand as structuring the answer. Let us start with the introduction. In the introduction, you can give basic definition of heat budget, which refers to the fact that it is balance of incoming and outgoing heat flow on Earth's surface. So that is something which you have to inculcate in your introduction. This is something you can do in 2 to 3 lines so that you can give a precise introduction for this question. Now let us move on to the body aspect. In the heading 1, as we have talked, that we will indulge into deeper understanding what exactly are the components of the heat budget and how the entire mechanism work. You can draw a very simple diagram to depict what exactly is the incoming proportionate and what exactly is the outgoing proportionate and how it is distributed. You can also put the same in pointwise format where you can start with that sun's radiation, which is in the form of short wave form, enters the Earth atmosphere. 30% of the same is reflected back. 20%, around 20% is absorbed by the atmosphere, and rest remaining around 50% is absorbed by land and ocean. Now there is again, you have to understand that almost 70% of the energy is absorbed. Now we have to also understand that there is also outflow of the heat through conduction, latent heat and long wave radiation. Now that can be through reabsorption by the cloud and atmosphere, through redistribution by convection and release through condensation. So these are the kind of mechanism that are in place for the outflow. So you have understood that in the heat budget we have certain inflow elements and outflow elements. So you can depict the same in the heading 1 through this kind of structuring as well. Let us move on to the second demand of the question, which we can inculcate in the heading 2 as an impact of human activities on heat budget. Now again, this diagram is just to help you understand what are the components that we are going to deal with. You do not have to draw the diagram again over here. Firstly, you can talk about the greenhouse gases. As we have seen, rise in greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane and water vapor, which are emitted through pollution. They trap the heat, causing Earth's temperature to rise. So over here we are talking about this element where the absorption is sufficient and the outflow of the heat is not there. Thereby it traps the heat within the Earth's atmosphere and thus increases the temperature of the Earth's surface. Second is with respect to the albedo reduction. We have seen that how through pollution the snow cover and wherever we have sufficient amount of albedo is reduced. So this component which is absorbed by ocean and land also increases. Thereby the absorption of the heat augments on the Earth's surface. The next is with respect to aerosol. We have two types of aerosol. We will see further again in question number 3 that there are aerosol which have cooling effect as well as heating effect. So over here aerosol have dual effect. They also reflect back some of the heat from the atmosphere. At the same time, they also ensure that the heat is trapped within the Earth's atmosphere. The next component we can talk about is evaporation and cloud cover. We have seen that higher precipitation can again trap the solar radiation. At the same time, higher amount of cloud cover can also reflect back more solar radiation, cooling the planet. So it has a dual impact. And lastly, we have other impacts. Other factors such as urbanization, land use changes, deforestation have also altered the heat balance, such as altering the albedo and radiation absorption. So these are the kind of impact proof points that you can inculcate in the heading 2 of the body, and thus you have concluded your body aspect. Now let us move on to the conclusion aspect, where you can talk about that we have seen various instances of reportings from international scientific community such as IPCC, where we have seen that to ensure that the heat budget of Earth is sustained in a way that the global population can also survive along with, we have to ensure that we implement certain treaties and certain policies. You can also cite about Paris Climate Agreement over here. That why the entire global community must stick to the commitment they have ensured through this kind of agreement, and thereby ensure that the heat budget along with the climate change is also in a sustainable way going ahead. So that is something for question number 1 you can conclude. Let us see the model answer and understand how can we structure our answer writing. Firstly, in the introduction, you can give the definition of heat budget in a brief amount. Then you can expand the idea through explaining the process involved in the heading 1 of the body. In heading 2, you can talk about the impact of human activities on heat budget and list down different impact proof points. And lastly, you can conclude with Paris Climate Treaty, and you can also talk about that how the heat budget is altering through different greenhouse gases, and thereby we need to mitigate the same. So that is all for question number 1. Let's move on to question number 2. Let's read the question number 2 together. Explain how Western disturbances impact the climate over Indian subcontinent. Now this is a second level question where there is a concept given and you have to talk about its impact on the climate of Indian subcontinent. So Western disturbance over here is the concept, as in the concept that you have to expand and understand what is the impact of the same on Indian climate. So if you understand this question, you have to structure the answer in such a way that in the introduction you can briefly talk about the Western disturbances. In the body aspect, you can talk about the impact. Now that impact can be positive or negative. So you have two headings in the body covered, and in the conclusion you can again reiterate the importance of Western disturbance for the Indian subcontinent. So that is the structuring of question number 2. Let us start with the introduction. In the introduction, as we have to explain the Western disturbances, you can talk about it how it is a low pressure weather system which originates at Mediterranean Sea, and through subtropical westerly jet stream it navigates through the Asian subcontinent, and it interacts with the Indian topography, and over here we can see different variety of impact like precipitation and other impacts you can see in the Indian subcontinent. So this is something which you can inculcate as an introduction, where you will be just explaining in a small brief amount that what exactly is Western disturbance. In the body, we will be delving with impacts. You can start with the heading 1 as in the positive impact. A bigger heading you can talk about as in impact of Western disturbances over the climate of Indian subcontinent, and you can start with the positive impact. You can talk about how it actually benefits the agricultural productivity through water restoration and conservation. We have also seen that how it kind of provides the precipitation which the Bay of Bengal branch as well as the Arabian Sea branch in the monsoon season fails to provide in the northwestern region with full intensity. So that is something you can start, that it provides for the precipitation replenish aquifer and reservoir, which is crucial for agricultural practices. Second, you can talk about air pollution reduction. We have seen various current affairs related to the same. You can understand the same through newspaper reading, that how western disturbances have provided relief in the northwestern region with respect to the air pollution. And lastly, you can talk about temperature moderation, where we have seen that how it provides for pleasant environment by preventing extremes in temperature. So these are the positive impacts you can inculcate in the heading 1 of the body. In the heading 2, where you have to delve further, talk about the negative impacts, as you have to balance the answer. Over here you can talk about the first point as infrastructural damage. We have seen that how strong winds accompanying the western disturbances can impact the infrastructure. It can also lead to flooding, where we have seen low-lying areas becoming the victim of the same. We have also seen that how it disrupts activity, communication networks, and impacting human day-to-day life. And at the end, you can also talk about thunderstorms and storms. They trigger dust storms and reducing visibility and causing hazardous air quality conditions. You can again reiterate the same through various current affair events, where we have seen that it impacts many states of India, and we have also seen that how it amounts to avalanches and heavy snowfall. So these are the kind of negative impact you can inculcate for question number 2's body. Let us move on to the conclusion, where you can talk about the significance of western disturbance, where again you can reiterate that despite certain challenges that western disturbances have on Indian subcontinent, it still provides for various variety of services such as water, as well as wind circulation and temperature moderation. So these are the kind of significance you can provide in the conclusion for question number 2. Let us see the model answer and understand how can we inculcate all these points in our answer writing practice. In the introduction, you can briefly talk about what exactly western disturbance refers to. You can draw a diagram to give a very explicit understanding in a visual way. Then in the heading 1, you can talk about the positive impacts, list down the proof points. And in the heading 2, you can talk about the negative impacts, again list down the proof points with substantiation. And lastly, conclude with again reiterating the significance of western disturbance for the Indian subcontinent. So that is all for question number 2. Let us move on to question number 3. Let's read the question number 3 together. Write the significance and challenges of the rising aerosol in the atmosphere. Now, if you read this question, it's very straightforward. It is with respect to the concept of aerosol, and we have to talk about certain significance as well as challenges related to the aerosol in the atmosphere. So if we structure the answer in the introduction, you can either define what exactly aerosol refers to, or you can provide certain context where we have seen that there are certain challenges or significance of aerosol. So you can start with certain kind of hook points in the introduction for the same. You can also cite data points where you can refer certain reports such as IPCC, where we have seen certain amount of rise in aerosol linked with climate change and greenhouse effect. So that is something you can also talk about in the introduction. So that is you can inculcate for the introduction. In the body aspect, the heading 1, we will talk about the significance of the aerosol, and in the heading 2, we will be talking about the challenges of rise in aerosol for the atmosphere. And finally, in the conclusion, we will be talking about way forward. So what exactly all we need to mitigate any challenges with respect to the aerosol for atmosphere. So let us start with the introduction. You can define aerosol. You can give a very simple definition over here. Aerosol refers to small solid particles or liquid droplets which has either cooling or heating effect depending on the color and the size of those particles. So you have to understand that aerosol have dual impact with respect to the structure and color. So that is something you can define over here. You can also give certain context where we have seen in the current affairs that how aerosol has overtaken greenhouse gases, causing a warmer climate and more weather extremes toward carbon neutrality. So this is something, a report which has been cited in the Nature Journal. You can also cite down to earth article where it talks about that less atmospheric aerosol may have intensified cyclone FM. So these are the kind of proof points or the context that we are getting with respect to the aerosol and its impact on the atmosphere. So that is something you can initiate as a context for the introduction. In the body, we have to directly deal with the major demand, which is significance, and in the heading 2, we'll be dealing with the challenges. Let us start with the heading 1, the significance of the aerosols in the atmosphere. Over here, you have to list down various proof points why exactly we have to understand that aerosols are significant for the atmosphere. Firstly, it helps with respect to global warming mitigation, as we understood that aerosol has a dual impact, as in cooling as well as heating. With respect to the cooling effect, we have seen that it helps with respect to reduction in temperature up to 0.5% in certain regions. So it counterbalances the impact of global warming. In the very first question with respect to the heat budget, we saw that how aerosol can also help with respect to the cooling effect by making sure that the heat which is entering the Earth's surface is reflected back. So these are the kind of proof points that we are inculcating for the aerosol. Second is with respect to the cloud formation enhancement. As we have seen that aerosols are tiny solid particle or liquid droplets, they act as a great nuclei for condensation and thus helps with respect to the cloud formation. Again, in the heat budget aspect, we have seen that how cloud they help with respect to the cooling of the Earth's surface and helping with respect to managing the ambient temperature for living beings on the Earth. Next is with respect to UV radiation reduction. Over here again we have seen that how it helps with respect to lowering the amount of UV radiation entering the Earth's surface. The next point is with respect to air purification by reflecting sunlight and acting as a cloud condensation. It helps removing pollutants from the Earth's atmosphere and reduces the formation of smoke and ground level ozone. And lastly, we have wildfire risk reduction, as it reduces the sunlight and atmospheric heat, thereby mitigating such kind of wildfire situations. Now let's move on to understand the challenges with respect to the rising aerosol. Now this is just a graphical understanding that there are certain global level events which are augmenting the aerosol and they have certain challenges for the atmospheric conditions. We have seen that how wildfire smokes, dust as a source of aerosol, as well as agricultural burning, as well as certain natural events such as typhoons and cyclones, they also amount to augmenting the aerosol and have certain challenges with respect to the atmosphere. We will list down those proof points, such as firstly, aerosol can also worsen the air quality, causing health issues and reducing visibility. It can impact the climate change directly, where we have seen extreme weather conditions. This was something again we were trying to inculcate in the introduction of the question, where we have seen that there are instances where aerosol has been directly linked with the reason behind exacerbating climate change. We have also seen that certain aerosol particles can give rise to acid rain, harming the ecosystem and infrastructure. We have also seen that how ozone layer has direct linkages with the aerosol crop yield reduction, as it lowers the photosynthesis, where we have seen that how aerosol reflects the sunlight in the atmosphere. And again, ocean acidification, this is something which you can also understand from acid rain. So these are the kind of challenges, the proof points which you can inculcate in the heading 2 of the body of question number 3. Let us move on to the conclusion of question number 3. In the conclusion, you can talk about the way ahead points that we have seen that there are certain challenges with respect to the rising aerosol. There must be certain kind of measures taken by the government as well as by people to ensure there is a reduction in pollution as well as mitigation of certain greenhouse gases, and thereby we can ensure that the aerosol in the atmosphere is in ambient quantity. So this is something you can conclude in question number 3. Let us see the model answer and understand how can we inculcate all the proof points that we have written for our answer writing practice. In the introduction, you can cite data point, you can give the definition, or you can give the context with respect to the rise in aerosol in atmosphere. You can talk about the significance in heading 1, list down the proof points. In the heading 2, you can talk about the challenges, list down the proof points along with certain examples. And lastly, you can talk about going ahead, we need to mitigate certain pollution levels to ensure that the aerosol in the atmosphere is in ambient quantity, and thus we can ensure the climate change impact is also minimal. So this is all for question number 3 and for today's answer writing practice. So keep writing and thank you so much.